I'm Noor Fatima, independent legal and geopolitical analyst focusing on the Middle East, international law, and global power politics. Today's analysis connects economics, law, and power across the Gulf region, examining how state decisions made in boardrooms, ministries, and financial capitals translate into real political and human consequences. We'll cover three interconnected issues: Saudi-UAE economic rivalry and its impact on the Yemen war, Kuwait's 2026 citizenship revocation lists, legal and political analysis, Qatar's sovereign wealth fund investments, and their relevance to the U.S. midterm cycle. These may appear separate, but they are not. Gulf economic rivalry and the Yemen peace process. Let's begin with the economic rivalry between Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates and why it matters for Yemen. Contextual background. For years, Saudi Arabia and the UAE were publicly aligned, politically, militarily, and economically. That alignment began to fracture around 2019-2020, when both states launched competing economic visions. Saudi Arabia pushed Vision 2030, attempting to reposition Riyadh as the region's financial and logistics hub. The UAE, especially Dubai and Abu Dhabi, had already built that role over decades. What followed was not open confrontation, but a quiet economic competition, competing trade rules, pressure on multinationals to relocate regional headquarters, diverging regulatory and investment incentives. This rivalry did not stay confined to economics. Yemen. From coalition to competition. Both Saudi Arabia and the UAE entered the Yemen conflict as part of a coalition. But their strategic interests diverged. Saudi Arabia prioritized border security and political settlement. The UAE focused on ports, maritime access, and southern influence over time. UAE-backed forces in southern Yemen often pursued goals in tension with Saudi-backed negotiations. Legal and geopolitical implications. Under international humanitarian law, particularly the Geneva Conventions, external sponsors of armed actors bear responsibility for the conduct of hostilities. The fragmentation of coalition objectives has prolonged negotiations, undermined unified ceasefire enforcement, created competing governance structures on the ground, independent assessment. The uncomfortable reality is this: economic rivalry at the Gulf level has reduced incentives for a rapid, unified Yemen settlement. Not because either side seeks endless war, but because post-war influence, ports, trade routes, and reconstruction contracts are already being calculated. Public impact for civilians in Yemen: prolonged instability, fragmented aid access, delayed political normalization. This is a clear example of how economic competition among wealthy states can extend suffering in poorer ones, even without explicit intent. Kuwait Citizenship Revocation List 2026. Now we turn to Kuwait, and a domestic issue with regional and legal significance. What is happening? In 2026, Kuwait has expanded citizenship review and revocation measures, particularly targeting naturalized citizens, dual nationality cases, allegations of fraud or procedural irregularities. This is confirmed policy, not rumor. Legal framework. Under Kuwaiti law, citizenship is considered a grant by the state, not an irrevocable right. The executive retains broad discretion. However, under international human rights law, including the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Convention on the Reduction of Statelessness, states are obligated to avoid arbitrary deprivation of nationality, ensure due process and legal remedies. What's disputed? The core dispute is not whether Kuwait can regulate citizenship. It can. The dispute is transparency, consistency. Access to appeal. Critics argue revocations risk becoming political tools rather than purely legal corrections. Geopolitical context. Across the Gulf, citizenship equals access to welfare, political inclusion, economic security. As economic pressures rise and populations grow, states are quietly redefining national belonging. Independent assessment: Kuwait's actions reflect a broader Gulf trend. Citizenship is being securitized. This may strengthen state control in the short term. but it risks international scrutiny, domestic alienation, legal challenges abroad, public impact for affected families, loss of legal status, employment barriers, statelessness, risks for the region. A precedent. Other states may quietly follow Qatar's sovereign wealth fund and U.S. midterms 2026. Finally, we look at Qatar and money. Contextual background. Qatar operates one of the world's most influential sovereign wealth funds. Its investments span real estate, technology, energy, media, and infrastructure. In recent years, increased Qatari investment has flowed into U.S. financial markets during politically sensitive periods. What is confirmed investments are legal. They are conducted through regulated financial instruments. No direct campaign financing is alleged. What raises questions? Timing. Large capital inflows during U.S. midterm cycles raise legitimate analytical questions about influence access policy alignment. Legal framework under U.S. law. Foreign entities cannot directly fund political campaigns. Investment activity itself is not illegal. But under foreign influence and transparency norms, financial leverage can still shape policy environments, lobbying ecosystems, strategic relationships, geopolitical analysis. Qatar's strategy is not about elections. It is about positioning, maintaining relevance in Washington, hedging against regional isolation, securing long-term security partnerships. This is soft power through finance, not interference. Independent assessment. This is not a scandal, but it is a pattern worth watching. In geopolitics, money does not need to buy votes to shape outcomes. It only needs to open doors. Public impact. For international norms, blurred lines between investment and influence. For global politics, increasing normalization of financial statecraft. Across these three cases, Saudi-UAE rivalry, Kuwait's citizenship policy, and Qatar's financial strategy, one pattern is clear. Power in the Middle East is no longer expressed only through armies or ideology, but through law, economics, and administrative control. Understanding these dynamics requires looking beyond headlines and following legal frameworks, financial flows, strategic incentives. This has been Noor Fatima with an independent legal and geopolitical analysis. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, and I'll see you in the next update.